Let's start again. Okay, so Gemara Mem Daled Amrav in Menachos. Turn about Chilaz and Zeh Gufo Dam Liyam. Zel Gufo Dam Liyam. This Chilaz, its body is like the sea. Riyasa Dam Dog, its creation is like a fish. Valel Chalashim Shana comes up once every 70 years. With Damotzav in Techeles, with its blood, you call it Techeles. The Pichel Dog on Riyakarim. Therefore, its blood is expensive. Okay? So this is basically a somewhat problematic Gemara for the Murex Trunculus people. Right. And let's go see Rashi. Gufo, Mare Gufo, Tavnis Yukno. So the way its body looks, the form of its image. Okay, so our Chilazon is not particularly Dom Eliyam. Some of them come up with a blue streak or a blue band. And that blue band is what they say is what is similar to the sea. I think if we did a Google search on that, I don't know if actually I might be making it up. I'm just going to blue dye. Okay, so here, do you see the screen which I have up in the English?
Yes.
Okay, so the fur color of its body is like the sea. This is an article by Professor Mendel Singer from Cleveland, who's a pen pal of mine, but I haven't spoken to him in a few years. The first requirement was Lashon. He's against Techeles. He believes Techeles is not Techeles. Okay. So as Roberta points out, first requirement is Lashon Gufo, meaning body or flesh. It does not refer to the shell, which is usually rendered natik or klipa. The shown here, Gufo Dom Eliyam, is similar to the statement just a few lines in the Gemara, Techeles Dom Eliyam, which is understood that the color of Techeles is similar to the color of the sea. The comparison is extended to the sky. The sapphire indicated that Techeles is blue. If just a few lines apart dealing with the same subject, you may find the same expression, Dom Eliyam, and it's reasonable to conclude that the meaning is the same in both cases. If the Techeles and the body Techeles are both Dom Eliyam, and the color of Techeles and the color of the body Techeles must be similar, both blue, right? This is shown supported by Lashon the Price of Techeles, which states Gufo Demo Lirikia. The body of the Murex does not resemble the sea. The Patil group argues that the shell of the Murex trunk is sometimes covered with a sea fouling. The color of these organisms will vary from place to place, but is not blue or green.
No, but
this argument fails on three counts. First, the requirements for the body, not for the shell. Second, the color of the sea is fouling, and the sea fouling is only sometimes blue. Since it's usually not blue, the Gemara certainly would not choose to describe it as blue. So it's impossible Chazal would choose to identify the Murex Trunculus by giving a description of the sea fouling, which is neither part of the creature nor distinctive. Since it's covering everything else in the area as well. Okay? Some have tried to argue that the Hebrew Yam Kameos means seabed. Only the shell is covered like the seabed, not the body. Considering the Yam almost always means sea and is used as such in regards to Techeles in many places, it is hard to believe that to mean the seabed here. In fact, required that the color of the body of the Chilazon be like Yam is just a few lines after the Gemara's statement that the color of Yam, which everyone, including the Murex supporters, agrees means sea. So this is one of the severe issues which Murex Trunculus advocates deal with. How is it Dom Eliyam? So the truth is that we don't understand what Dom Eliyam means in any event, because a blue fish is not necessarily like the sea. So we don't know what Dom Eliyam means. I would propose that really Dom Eliyam means it likes the sea. In other words, Dom Eliyam means it is similar to a sea creature. It inhabits the sea, and therefore it's not its countenance which is being discussed, but rather it is its environment, its habitat. But that it's not so simple to say that. If it not for the archaeological evidence that the Murex Trunculus was used as a dye in ancient times, the fact that it was used, the fact that it says Don Miliam is a very, very difficult obstacle to deal with. Okay?
Right.
Comments?
No, you point out that the archaeological evidence is extremely strong, and that's
which of course does not sit well with traditionalists, right? Number two, its form is like a fish. Rashi said on that.
Can you scroll up a little bit?
What?
Can you scroll the screen a little bit?
I want to first find the Rashi. Here. Rashi says, it just says Gufa Mara Gufa Tabnis Gyuto. So that's about the first thing, Gufa Damliam. Ubriyasa Daimaladam. Now, this is an interesting language. Ubriyasa Daimaladam. Right, the form is like a fish. That's not necessarily, first of all, the first one didn't say Domaliam, the color of its body. First it said Domaliam, which is, it's similar to the sea. The second one says, Briyaso like a kedog. Its creation is like a fish, or it is a kind of fish. Not its form is like a fish. It's not quite the same thing. Okay? But here it says that's criteria 2. The statement of Gemara is Biyato domeladag. Biyato means its form, as explained by Rashi and Rabbeinu Gershom. The Murex Trunculus in no way resembles a fish. Supporters of the Murex Trunculus theory suggest Biyato could mean its creation, since Murex Trunculus spawns like fish. So after relying on an interpretation of Biyato that is contrary to classical Mefarshim, there's no difficulty. Since most mollusks spawn, it is unlikely that Chazal would have chosen this characteristic to distinguish the chilosim from other species. Okay, so this is if you were the Radziner, you'd say the first two criteria are evidence for Radziner, because the cuttlefish looks like a fish, and presumably there are blue cuttlefish, so they can look like the sea, but the cuttlefish fails and with other problems. So what you would say about this, again, if you're a Murex Trunculus person, you would say is that it actually is, like it says here, reproduces like a fish, or that you find it again in the sea like a fish. Okay, so it's in a sea environment, and it also exists like a fish. I don't know if a Murex Trunculus actually has gills. I don't think they do.
I have no idea. Just
it's a snail. So I don't think it actually. I mean, it probably has to remain wet, but it doesn't look to me like the type of thing which actually, would use. Well, let's see. This actually is a nice Domaliam picture. You see this one?
yeah.
So this one's like bluish. That's the type of thing that they use in order to demonstrate that it might be actually fouling like the sea. So let's find the Murex. Is that what it is? Hexapex? No, it's not.
It's the same thing.
It doesn't say how it breathes here. Marine gastropod. There are many of them.
Yeah.
That's nice to know. But it doesn't say here how they breathe. Habitat. respiratory system.
Respiratory system. Yeah, there you go.
Almost all marine gastropods breathe with a gill, but many freshwater species and the majority of terrestrial species have a partial paleo, whatever that is, lung. That's very important. Almost all gastropods is whatever. Okay, so I think we can assume that they have gills. So since they have gills, so therefore that might be briaso kedag. If they breathe like so they breathe in water as opposed to air, that would make sense. Okay, so that might be one of the reasons why it says briaso kedag. Okay, getting back to the Gemara said the next thing is of oleh chas l'shivim shana. So oleh chas l'shivim shana, the problem they make with that is regarding the requirement of every 70 years. The Ratzina Rebbe says that this means there are times that the chilazon is abundant. Likewise, I've heard it's exciting. Also, the price of the Techeles says chilazon comes up every 7 years. There's again another price. So is I think that there should be some cycle, though not necessarily 7 or 70 years. Murex Trunculus says no known cycle or time for harvesting or times of unusual abundance. The Teal followers have tried to ignore the Hebrew Sheva Shanim in the Brisa. No, tried to argue that Hebrew Sheva Shanim in the Brisa supposed to mean sevenfold, and Pliny the Elder mentions an optimal 7-month cycle for harvesting New York snails. This not only ignores the Gemara's expression 70 years, but also assumes that sevenfold means with 7 1-month period. And that's just the reason why the base unit should be 1 month. Clearly attached to the Gemara and the Brisa is that it's unusual for there to be an abundance, and every 7 months is hardly unusual or noteworthy. So I don't think that this is the least of the problems from this Brisa, because 170 years, the very language of 70 is clearly a metaphor. Mm-hmm. And therefore it says what comes up 170 years, it means that it's rare. It doesn't mean necessarily that there's a cycle. It doesn't mean that there is a specific time which they come up. It means that this thing is rare. And like it says, even by Peter Menachos, he says, was it Achas Shishim? Or Shivim Shana? What's the language in the Siddur?
What?
By Peter Menachos.
It doesn't. You know?
Tiny back up on Chas Shishima the Chas le something Shana. I saw, I say it every morning by heart, and now I can blank on what it says. And it's a problem. I saw Ba. Well, you don't remember it either, so you're just as guilty here.
I don't say Pita Makatarit every day.
What do you mean? Don't say Karbanos every day? You don't say it by Enkalokenu? Here's what everybody says it every day.
I'm not sure Pita Makatarit is in the weekday Enkalokenu.
Here it is. Tiny Bar Kapara. See it?
Pita Makatarit.
Look at the screen. Come on.
Yeah, I'm looking at what I say every day. There's nothing about every 60 or however many years.
Okay, so look at the screen. Tiny Bar Kapara. Tiny Bar Kapara. Every 60 or 70 years, there would be enough leftover ketores that make up a half measure of the batch. Okay? So 60 or 70 years doesn't necessarily be once every 60 or 70 years. Literally means once every very long time. Okay? So the same thing over here, means it's rare. So the same thing over here, I would say that this, again, this is the least problem with the Murex Trunculus is the fact that it says because it means it's hard to find, and that's why it's expensive, or it's something which you have to even if it wasn't hard to find because there aren't enough of them, the fact that it requires great expense to go diving and finding them in of itself makes it rare that it should have that quality. Finally, it says it's very expensive. So, of course, that's no evidence because, as he says here, purple dye from all species of Murex, including Trunculus, was exceedingly expensive because each snail possessed solo dye that took about 8,000 snails to make 1 gram of dye. In one criterion, 4 Rashi with the Techeles dye was expensive because the Techeles is their appearance and not because of the minute dye quantity. Let's see that Rashi. That Rashi is. Because it's rare, that's why its price is high. So he wants to say, Dr. Singer, that's because that's evidence against the Murex because according to Murex, it should be rare because it should be expensive because it takes many snails to make a little bit of dye. Whereas Rashi explains that the Techeles dye was because the Techeles rare appearance, not because of the minute dye quantity. The Techeles language where a statement that dye is expensive is used to the word leficha. Therefore, the preceding statement was about the once in 70-year appearance of the Chilazon. Rabbi Herzog indicates that this requirement implies that the quantity of the dye in the Chilazon was not very small, which is inconsistent with Murex Trunculus. Okay, so again, I don't think that this is such a big raya because the fact that if there were thousands of them upon the seashore all the time, then it would not be so expensive. But the fact is that they're rare. They're rare, and that it's hard, meaning that they're hard to harvest, and therefore it's hard to harvest. The chas shibim shana is not mean that it takes that much measure, as I said, of specific years, but a measure of scarcity, and therefore they're scarce enough that if you need 8,000 ants to make a diagram, it would still be cheap. We need 8,000 snails to make a diagram. That's very diffuse and very expensive. But if one wants to argue against, this is a very important point to make, which is that one wants to argue against Murex Trunculus, wants to say that Murex Trunculus is not Techeles, this Gemara is something to rely on. And even though we can reconcile by saying things here are metaphoric, and they probably are metaphoric, you can never demand that somebody wear Techeles on the basis of the evidence in the Gemara, because the evidence in the Gemara is insufficient and murky.
It's also contradictory because there's the Gemara we saw last week, which was very much in sync with the Murex.
Correct. Right. Now, one thing I want to say, which is somewhat heretical, not very heretical, but somewhat, is that I suspect Rashi did not know what the Chilazon was. By the time Rashi was writing about it, was extinct. So, at least for practical purposes. So, therefore, when Rashi writes what he's writing, he's not writing based on knowledge. He's writing based on his assumptions of what the word actually means. So, therefore, it's very hard to find. It's going to be very hard to find a researcher in the Middle Ages who actually is going to have a clear-cut assessment of what Chilazon is. So what we'll have to see next week is that any Rishonim do seem to indicate that it's Murex Trunculus and not a cuttlefish or something else of that sort.
The Rishonim do what?
If any Rishonim seem to have a Masorah as to what the Chilazon actually look like.
Okay.
Okay? Are you disheartened by this Gemara?
Huh?
Are you dismayed by this Gemara?
Not particularly. Not particularly. The archaeological evidence is very strong, and that's
right.
that's.
So, that's obviously the fact that archaeological evidence is very strong is exactly what it makes thorns in the eyes of many traditionalists, right?
Well,
you understand that?
Look, we so exactly as we've discussed, the Gemaras are unclear because they're so far away when they were written, and they're contradictory. So there's no clear, the Gemara is not 100% clear as to what's talking about. So,
okay, so let's see next week if we can find any traces of the blue dye in the Rishonim. Or
Okay.
going for that matter, which would be even
Is this
better.
paper that you're showing something? I want to read the whole thing. Do you want to send me the link?
I don't know yet. We're going to find it.
Hmm?
What do you say?
The paper you've got up on the screen.
Oh, well, I should send you a link. Sure. Okay, we'll do. Okay, good. Okay, have a good week.
All right. I'll be in touch next week. We may not be able to learn on Sunday. So,
Okay, whatever. We'll figure it out. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.